She smiled as if she already knew the ending. And suddenly, every heartbeat felt like it was caught in a story only we could write. The first time he noticed her, she was sitting at a corner table of the sunlit cafe, a book propped open in front of her, but her attention elsewhere, as if she were absorbing the world rather than the words on the page. He was 22, the kind of young man who often felt out of place in spaces that required subtlety and patience. Yet there was something about the way she carried herself that demanded notice without demanding presence. She was 40 years old, an American Caucasian woman, with long black hair cascading gently over her shoulders. Her lightly tanned skin caught the morning light, revealing subtle freckles along the bridge of her nose and soft laugh lines that spoke of a life fully lived. Her figure was curvy, yet graceful, exuding a quiet confidence that drew the eye, and her dark brown eyes seemed to observe everything without appearing intrusive. When his gaze lingered a moment too long, she glanced up, her eyes meeting his, and a small, knowing smile curved her lips, an expression that felt impossible to read, yet infinitely inviting. She smiled as if she already knew the ending of a story neither of them had yet written. For a moment, the clatter of cups, the hum of conversation, and the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee dissolved around him. Her presence occupied the space with a magnetic calmness, and he could not tell if it was curiosity, experience, or some subtle confidence that made the air between them feel simultaneously heavy and light. The cafe was bright with morning sun spilling through large windows, illuminating polished wooden floors and casting soft reflections across tables. Warm light highlighted her long black hair, revealing its natural sheen and gentle movement whenever she shifted in her seat. The way she crossed her legs and rested one hand lightly against her book was unassuming, yet every motion radiated grace. He noticed the subtle details, the delicate curve of her fingers, the slight tilt of her head when she absorbed the sound around her, the ease with which she existed in her own space without appearing aloof. He felt a pull he had never experienced before. It was not simply attraction. It was a sense that she had arrived fully formed, aware of the world and of him, and yet somehow welcoming him into her orbit with nothing more than a fleeting look. He wanted to approach, to speak, but the hesitation of youth, the weight of self-consciousness, and the awareness of the years between them held him frozen. He watched as she took a quiet sip of her coffee, eyes glancing out the window, and in that suspended moment, he imagined countless possibilities. Conversations that might never happen, confessions that might never be spoken, and the strange, undeniable pull of a connection he could not yet name. Every detail mattered. The soft creases at the corners of her eyes, hinting at a life of laughter and challenge. The gentle curve of her lips, the subtle grace of her posture, the quiet authority in her presence, all converging in a single instant that would linger in his memory. And when she glanced up again, meeting his eyes with that same enigmatic smile, he realized something had shifted. A story had begun, one neither of them could yet fully comprehend, but he knew it would not leave him unchanged. The first encounter had left a quiet impression, one that lingered in the spaces between thoughts and routines. He returned to the cafe a few days later, telling himself it was just for the coffee, yet every step toward the familiar corner seat betrayed a hope he was too young, or too cautious, to fully admit. The moment he saw her, a flicker of recognition passed across her face, subtle but undeniable, as if she had been expecting him all along. She remained poised, graceful in her every movement, the kind of composure that spoke of years of navigating the world with quiet confidence. She was 40, an American Latino woman with long black hair, cascading in soft waves over her shoulders. Her lightly tanned skin caught the warm morning light filtering through the cafe windows, the subtle freckles across her nose adding texture to a face already marked by gentle smile lines at the corners of her eyes. Her curvy figure, elegant and poised, sat easily in the chair, the soft pastel blouse and tailored cream trousers she wore complementing the casual brightness of the cafe. Her dark brown eyes, alert yet serene, flicked to him and lingered for a fraction longer than politeness required, and that moment alone made him aware of a tension he hadn't expected. As he approached, she tilted her head slightly, gesturing toward the empty seat beside her with a quiet invitation. He hesitated for a heartbeat before sliding into the chair, the air between them charged with an unspoken acknowledgement. They began to talk, first with light conversation about the city, the unusual weather, and favorite books, but each word carried an undercurrent of curiosity and connection. His youthful energy found its rhythm in her calm, measured responses, and every glance revealed her careful observation. The way she seemed to notice the small, honest details of his mannerisms, the slight fidget of his fingers, the way he avoided prolonged eye contact before stealing another look. Their hands rested on the table near one another, not touching yet close enough that he felt the warmth emanating from her skin, a subtle but persistent reminder of her presence. Her laughter, soft and genuine, broke through the hesitation that had kept him rigidly polite moments before. It was a laugh that began in her chest and spilled outward, a sound that made him uncoil, that loosened the invisible tension he had carried unknowingly. The sunlight highlighted the gentle movement of her hair as she leaned slightly forward to emphasize a point, the curving of her lips and the sparkle in her dark brown eyes, enhancing the quiet intimacy building in that small, bright cafe. Time seemed to stretch and contract, minutes folding into hours, yet neither seemed concerned. They existed in a cocoon of soft morning light, the aroma of coffee mingling with the muted conversations around them. He noticed the subtle confidence in her posture, the way she navigated the conversation with grace, never overbearing, never impatient. Every gesture, every glance, carried a weight that transcended age and circumstance, a magnetic pull that made him aware of an unfamiliar longing, a fascination not merely with her beauty, but with the depth she exuded effortlessly. By the time they parted, the cafe had filled with the gentle buzz of the day, yet a private, shared space lingered between them. His fingers brushed the edge of the table as she gathered her belongings, and the smallest contact seemed to hum with possibility. He left with a heightened awareness of her presence, the knowledge that this was only the beginning, that something profound, quiet, restrained, but undeniable, had begun to grow in the brief hours they had shared. The following meeting carried a different rhythm. The cafe had the same bright morning light, but something in the air felt heavier, charged with a subtle anticipation neither had yet named. He arrived early, nervously stirring his coffee as he waited, aware of the heightened curiosity that pulled him toward her. She arrived soon after, 40 years old, an American Caucasian woman with long black hair falling in soft waves past her shoulders, wearing a crisp white blouse tucked into dark tailored trousers. Her lightly tanned skin glowed in the warm sunlight, and her subtle freckles and soft laugh lines added a lived-in beauty to her serene, graceful presence. Her dark brown eyes, observant and steady, held a quiet amusement as she settled into the same corner seat, giving a small, knowing smile that made his chest tighten in ways he hadn't anticipated. Their conversation began with small things, the weather, the city streets, and the books they loved, but it soon deepened naturally, as if both were gently peeling back the layers of their separate lives. She spoke of teaching art at a small college, her voice measured yet warm, each word chosen deliberately. There was a faint melancholy behind her stories, not sadness exactly, but a subtle weight of choices made, doors closed, and experiences carefully tucked away. He listened intently, aware of the richness in her life, the depth that came from both triumphs and regrets. When he shared his own uncertainties and dreams, his youthful voice carried vulnerability, and he noticed how she leaned in slightly, dark brown eyes fixed on him, not judging but absorbing every word. The sunlight streaming through the window illuminated the delicate contours of her face, the soft curve of her cheek, the slight smile lines around her eyes, and he found himself captivated by the nuance of every movement. Her long fingers rested lightly on the table, graceful even in stillness, and he could sense the ease in her posture, the quiet confidence of a woman fully aware of who she was yet willing to share fragments of herself. He felt the subtle pull of her energy, magnetic yet restrained, and each laugh, each tilt of her head, seemed to tighten the invisible threads drawing them closer. Moments of silence became meaningful, filled with unspoken acknowledgement. When she laughed at something he said, the sound resonated deeply, surprising him with how genuine and freeing it felt. He noticed the warmth in her presence, the kind of warmth that made him acutely aware of the proximity of her hand near his, the small movement of her shoulders as she shifted, the soft exhale that accompanied a thoughtful pause. Every detail mattered. The way sunlight caught her hair, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the coffee, the slight narrowing of her eyes when she was considering his words. By the time they left, hours had passed unnoticed. He walked out into the sunlight, feeling a mixture of exhilaration and quiet longing, aware that this connection, so subtle, so profound, was altering him in ways he didn't yet fully understand. He had glimpsed the depth of her experience, the gentle vulnerability beneath her confident exterior, and for the first time, he felt not only admiration but the tender beginnings of something far more intimate, a bond forged in understanding, laughter, and shared moments of quiet authenticity. Days turned into evenings, and their meetings began to carry a rhythm of intimacy that was as unspoken as it was undeniable. He arrived at the cafe earlier than usual, his mind restless with anticipation. She appeared shortly after, 40 years old, an American Latino woman with long black hair falling in gentle waves over her shoulders. Her lightly tanned skin seemed to glow in the soft afternoon sunlight filtering through the cafe windows, accentuating subtle freckles and faint smile lines at the corners of her dark brown eyes. Her outfit, a soft lavender blouse and tailored beige pants, reflected both elegance and comfort, a perfect mirror of her poised and graceful demeanor. The way she carried herself, upright yet relaxed, spoke volumes about the quiet confidence and inner depth that had first drawn him in. As they spoke, the conversation drifted naturally from books and city streets to deeper matters, regrets, fleeting fears, and the quiet moments that had shaped their lives. He found himself revealing things he rarely admitted aloud: the restless uncertainty of youth, the struggles of finding direction, the delicate hopes that hovered somewhere between ambition and fear. She listened with the kind of attention that felt like a warm embrace, dark brown eyes locked on his with subtle curiosity and a faint, encouraging smile that made him feel seen in a way few people had ever managed. The space between them seemed charged with subtle electricity. His hand brushed the edge of his coffee cup, inches from hers on the table, and he felt a warmth ripple through him. Her fingers, long and elegant, shifted slightly, the movement deliberate yet fluid, as if acknowledging the silent tension without breaking the gentle decorum that had come to define their interactions. Each glance they shared held an unspoken language, hesitation mingled with desire, curiosity tinged with caution. The way her head tilted slightly when she laughed, the soft exhale she made during thoughtful pauses, the slight narrowing of her dark brown eyes, all conveyed unspoken layers of emotion. At one point, she leaned forward, speaking softly, voice measured yet imbued with warmth. "Sometimes, I feel like life passes by too quickly, and we miss what matters most." Her words lingered in the air, carrying weight far beyond the simple observation. He felt a tug at his chest, an awakening of understanding that she was inviting him into a space of trust, of shared vulnerability. He wanted to respond, to bridge the gap between admiration and connection, yet the awareness of their age difference and the fragility of these delicate beginnings made him tread lightly, savoring each fleeting second. Time seemed irrelevant. The cafe hummed around them, sunlight catching the strands of her hair, glinting off the subtle curves of her figure, emphasizing the elegance of her posture. He became acutely aware of the gentle warmth radiating from her presence, the small, meaningful ways she closed the distance without breaking the boundary of decorum. a hand resting near his for a heartbeat, a lingering look that hinted at what words could not convey. As they rose to leave, the subtle energy of the encounter lingered, like an invisible thread tethering them together. Every smile, every measured pause, every fleeting touch was a promise yet to be explored. He walked away feeling the quiet stirrings of something profound, knowing that the connection had deepened beyond casual acquaintance and had started to carve a permanent space in his heart. A space that, like her enigmatic smile, promised an ending neither of them could yet fully imagine, but both sensed would be extraordinary. The evening air carried a soft chill, a subtle reminder that the world outside moved in a rhythm entirely its own. They stepped out of the bright cafe, her 40-year-old American Caucasian presence striking against the warm glow of the streetlights. Long black hair framed her lightly tanned face, softly catching the gentle luminescence as she walked beside him. Subtle freckles dotted her nose and cheeks, her dark brown eyes bright with curiosity and something more, something unspoken that pulled at him with every measured step. Her soft lavender sweater and fitted navy trousers reflected the casual elegance she carried so effortlessly, and the slight smile lines at the corners of her eyes deepened when she looked toward him. Their conversation was a gentle weave of stories and observations, words flowing naturally, yet there was a layer of tension beneath the surface. Every glance seemed to linger longer than expected. Every movement seemed to carry meaning. When they reached a quiet park bench, she paused, looking out over the city streets, and he felt the subtle gravity of her presence beside him. Her curvy, graceful posture conveyed both relaxation and an understated strength, a blend of maturity and warmth that left him momentarily awestruck. The world around them seemed to blur, fading into soft focus as their connection deepened. He found himself stealing glances at the delicate sweep of her long black hair, the way the evening light kissed her lightly tanned skin, the small arch of her eyebrows as she listened with rapt attention. She laughed softly at a comment he made, a sound that started deep in her chest and floated outward, catching in the crisp night air. He felt a jolt in his chest, a tightening that was neither fear nor discomfort, but a recognition of something profound emerging. At one point, she shifted slightly, the tip of her hand brushing against his as she gestured toward a distant street lamp. The contact was fleeting, yet the warmth lingered, a small, intimate acknowledgement of the unspoken tension that had begun to define their encounters. She tilted her head, dark brown eyes narrowing playfully, her smile subtle yet charged with meaning. He sensed the careful way she balanced the line between closeness and restraint, an elegant dance that left him simultaneously exhilarated and cautious. They walked in silence for a stretch, the hum of the city around them softened by the quiet intimacy of proximity. The faint scent of her perfume mingled with the crisp evening air, creating a sensory impression that made him acutely aware of every detail. The rise and fall of her chest as she breathed, the graceful swing of her arms, the gentle cadence of her footsteps. Each small gesture, each nuanced movement, felt loaded with possibility, the weight of unspoken desires threading through the conversation and the pauses between words. By the time they reached the edge of the park, he felt the undeniable pull of the connection that had begun weeks ago. The warmth radiating from her, the quiet confidence and elegance in her posture, the fleeting brush of their hands, all converged into a moment suspended in time. He realized that something had shifted irrevocably. The bond was no longer casual curiosity, but a deep, resonant connection, tender and fragile, yet laden with potential. As she glanced at him, her enigmatic smile holding the promise of stories yet untold, he understood that this evening was a turning point, a quiet threshold where friendship might blossom into something far more profound and irrevocably intimate. The following afternoon, the cafe was bathed in warm sunlight, casting a soft glow across the polished wooden tables and the gentle steam rising from freshly brewed coffee. He arrived first, heart beating with anticipation. He tried, and failed to conceal. She appeared moments later, 40 years old, a 40-year-old American Latina woman with long black hair cascading over her shoulders, softly catching the light as she moved. Her lightly tanned skin shone with a natural radiance, and subtle freckles across her nose and cheeks complemented the gentle smile lines around her dark brown eyes. Her fitted cream blouse and soft olive trousers combined casual elegance with effortless poise, her curvy, graceful figure exuding a confidence that was both approachable and quietly magnetic. As she sat across from him, a small, enigmatic smile curling her lips, he noticed the way her eyes lingered on him. Not judgmental, not questioning, but attentive and deeply present. Their conversation began as usual, flowing with gentle ease, yet beneath the surface, an unspoken current hummed. Words of daily life, favorite books, and shared observations were layered with subtle, emotional intimacy. Each sentence carried weight, each pause held the potential for revelation. He felt compelled to share more, to offer glimpses of his uncertainties, his hopes, the small fears that no one usually heard. She listened, dark brown eyes attentive, and there was a warmth in her gaze that made him feel seen in a way that had nothing to do with age or appearances. At one point, their hands rested near each other on the table, not touching but close enough to feel the heat radiating from her skin. The small space between them seemed charged, each subtle movement magnified in significance. The gentle tilt of her head, the soft brush of hair behind her ear, the way her lips curved when she laughed at a passing remark. He was acutely aware of the contrast between his youth and her maturity. It felt less like a gap and more like a bridge, a connection that made the emotional distance collapse in the most gentle, compelling way. Her laughter, soft yet resonant, carried an authenticity that loosened the knots he didn't know he had held within himself. She leaned forward slightly, dark brown eyes locked on his, voice soft and measured. "You don't always have to have the answers, you know." Those words hung in the air, full of empathy and understanding, and he realized how rare it was to encounter someone so attuned to his internal world, someone who could hold both wisdom and warmth without ever seeming to lecture or patronize. Sunlight played across her features as they spoke, illuminating the subtle contours of her face, the elegance in her posture, the delicate strength of her presence. Each glance, each small gesture, communicated an intimacy that transcended mere conversation. Moments of silence were not empty, but filled with unspoken understanding, the gentle rhythm of shared breaths, the quiet acknowledgement of feelings neither dared yet fully to name. When it was time to leave, the brief brush of their hands as she reached for her cup made his pulse race. Outside, the city moved at its usual pace, but he felt suspended in the rare, fragile bubble they had created, an emotional closeness that hinted at something deeper, something quietly irresistible, yet carefully restrained. He walked away knowing that the next encounter would matter even more, that the invisible threads connecting them were taut and humming, ready to pull them toward a moment of undeniable revelation and connection. The cafe was filled with soft morning light, illuminating the polished wooden tables and casting a warm glow across the room. He arrived early, heart racing, aware that this meeting felt different, final in a way that promised closure, yet open to the delicate beginnings of something entirely new. She entered moments later, 40 years old, a 40-year-old American Caucasian woman with long black hair flowing gracefully over her shoulders. Her lightly tanned skin caught the sunlight, subtle freckles and soft laugh lines accentuating the warmth in her dark brown eyes. She wore a soft cream cardigan over a navy blouse, paired with tailored beige trousers, her curvy, graceful figure radiating confidence and effortless elegance. Her presence alone seemed to bend the room into quiet focus, each movement deliberate yet natural, every glance charged with emotion. They settled across from each other, the familiarity between them humming quietly, a thread connecting their shared moments over the past weeks. Conversation began gently, words about books, art, and daily life flowing naturally, but quickly deepened into personal reflections, fears, dreams, regrets, and the tender spaces between. He spoke with measured openness, revealing the uncertainty and restlessness of youth, while she responded with calm understanding, her dark brown eyes never leaving his, absorbing every detail, silently offering reassurance. Her soft, measured laughter broke through the quiet moments, a sound that seemed to make the world pause and take notice. As they spoke, their hands drifted closer across the table, not quite touching, yet the nearness carried weight. Each subtle gesture, the tilt of her head, the curve of her smile, the gentle rise and fall of her chest, conveyed more than words ever could. Her long black hair fell lightly across her shoulder, catching the sunlight and brushing the edge of his hand as she adjusted her posture. The small warmth radiating from her presence was magnetic, drawing him into a shared intimacy that felt both thrilling and safe. At one point, she leaned forward slightly, her voice soft and deliberate. "You've grown in ways you don't even realize." Her words lingered, heavy with unspoken admiration and encouragement, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond they had cultivated. He felt a swell of emotion, a deep recognition that the connection they shared was rare, a balance of vulnerability, trust, and quiet longing that neither of them had rushed or forced. Time seemed irrelevant. The cafe faded to background hum as they existed entirely in the space between them. The warmth of proximity, the small yet meaningful glances, the gentle brush of hands against the table. Each gesture, each word, felt intentional, loaded with a tenderness and awareness that only age and life experience could bring. He realized the power of this relationship. It was not defined by impulsive passion, but by understanding, patience, and the slow-building intimacy of shared vulnerability. When it came time to leave, they lingered at the doorway, exchanging a long look, her dark brown eyes glimmering with quiet knowledge, his own gaze searching for the promise they had nurtured. Her small smile, confident yet tender, conveyed a sense of inevitability, as if she already knew the outcome, that this connection, born of subtle glances, laughter, and heartfelt conversation, had transformed both of their lives. In that moment, the unspoken tension resolved into a shared acknowledgement of something enduring, a deep, emotional intimacy that transcended words, leaving both of them changed, fully aware that what they had built together was real, profound, and irrevocably theirs.